Welcome back to the home studio. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. Welcome to 2025 and welcome to episode 27 of the Stevie Richards Show. We hope you had a great holiday season and an amazing start to 2025. I am now going to turn it right over to my very cheerful co-host here, the grizzled James. How are you doing, James?
Right, okay, so you were saying this because I was complaining about AI. And rightly so, because, why don't we do shorts on this show? It's because AI sucks at making them, and then you were trying to give me, some software saying, oh, this was great. It's like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, we actually dropped a few F-bombs.
I'm Krusty the Clown.
A few F-bombs it'll be on the Patreon pre-show. People get a kick out of whatever we drop a little bit of cursing here and there, but we try not to. That's the whole thing. AI probably wouldn't pick up on the curse words anyway. Well, maybe they might pick up only on the curse words. And according to you, wrestling terminology is not AI's favorite thing. But I use something called Choppity when I had the behind the scenes channel and other things. And it works pretty darn good, especially for, face boxes and detecting and doing split and the transcription. We can give it a try. But that's one thing we want to do in 2025 is start trying to put some clips, some shorts, some reels up on different platforms and see if we can grow the show some more. Am I off base with that? Are you gonna? Don't yell at me. You're you're a little mean this morning, a little grizzled. Be careful.
Oh, you know how tired I am. All I do is complain about how tired I am. I get 4 hours these days when I used to, my pre-fatherhood days when I used to get a nice 8 hours every day. Man, this is going to age me. I'm going to start looking 24 soon.
Yeah, I know. I initially thought you'd go all the way up to 27, but I will go with you and say you'll stay a very nice grizzled 24 years old. You would do great in the wrestling business. The grizzledness is already there. All you're missing is a young wrestler, a young Stevie Richards walking up to you, asking you for advice, and then you take one puff of the cigarette, put it down, grind it out, and go, oh, let me see how you lock up, kid. Oh, I need to lock up. Geez, give it up. Burn your boots and walk away.
I had a pipe somewhere. I was going to smoke it. I've left it in the other room, apparently. We're going to do the intro very quickly. We should really say what this is about. What's this episode about, Stevie? It's a bit of a departure from the norm.
Well, we're going to do a lot of news. We do have a Smartport segment. I know we never do those anymore. So we do have one about Bob Holly and Brock Lesnar with the broken neck powerbomb spot. And also, just a side note for patreon.com/Stevie Richards, I actually did a behind the scenes on how I blurred out the WWE logo because we don't want any more trouble. But that's your job to handle that stuff. Also, we're going to talk about Ric Flair on Twitter. I know nothing about that because I'm not on social media. And also, we're going to try to touch on the CM Punk Seth Rollins promo, which a lot of people are really applauding. But we're going to ask the question, is it breaking a taboo with the verbiage back and forth, the conversation? And speaking of Punk, making a save in a towel, I saw that. And then, of course, wouldn't be an episode of the Stevie Richards Show without having the AEW fans wanting us dead. So, greatest opening match ever, Will Ospreay versus Fletcher, and much, much more. Oh, and let's double down on the AEW fan hatred of this show. Tony Khan, Media Scrum, worst question ever. Until the next worst question ever. So, did I get everything?
Oh, God, they're falling over themselves to ask stupid questions. Press scrums in pro wrestling is just the stupidest concept in the entire world because WWE Triple H is the exact same and Tony Khan's the exact same. Nobody wants to answer any real questions. And then if you ask a real question, you're probably not going to be invited back next time. So anyway, it's just a complete sort of what do they call it? Just a bubble.
Well, the wrestling business is essentially a bubble. Anybody that has opinions like we do or viewpoints or doing anything is just bitter and irrelevant and all a parasite, all these different things.
Echo chamber.
Echo chamber. That's a good word for it. What was I going to say? No, I can't wait to get to the scrum. Did we put that clip up about the scrums?
No, we're gonna watch that together. Live.
Well, there was another thing we spoke in general about the media scrums, how they're just a waste of time. I think it was on last episode or the episode before that.
Did we?
I think we did.
Man, if I was going to guess, I'd say we haven't talked about scrums on this show.
Well, we'll talk about it again.
Did you
By
talk
the
about
way,
it?
you have all
We're gonna talk
the
about
earmarks of pro wrestlers. You're bitter, you're grizzled. Well, you're irrelevant now that you're talking about it outside of the echo chamber. And now the CTE portion of it is coming to you because I have to remind you of episodes we've done. Now, I could be wrong. It could be my CTE kicking in with memories that are being injected into me rather than forgotten.
Yeah, you know, the problem is that I do, as you know, 3 different YouTube channels where I do a lot of different interviews and podcasts and stuff like that. And as soon as I've done it, and Chris will know this because, for example, Jerry Lynn. Jerry Lynn's currently on WSI at the moment. And I only did the interview a couple of days beforehand, and I have to ask him, who did he say for name association or firing line? Or what did he say at da-da-da-da-da? Because one, I can't be... One, I hate listening to myself, because who can really stand watching themselves unless you're a complete egomaniac? So I get Chris to do it for me and just say, can you just give me a very brief summary of what happened? It goes out my head. I do so many. It's almost like I watched a Johnny Carson documentary more than once. It was a great documentary. And basically, as soon as one show was over, he just went on to the next one. And he couldn't remember what happened the day before. And you get into this weird cycle of creating so much content that you're only going forward and you can't really refer to what you did in the past because it's in one ear and out the other. It's a weird condition.
Yeah, I obsess in a different way where I do watch some of it. I skim through to make sure the lighting, the audio, the video, it's basically a nuts and bolts production approach to watching that kind of stuff and trying to figure out how we can improve everything. I mean, you know how I am. It took every bit of me not to bother you during the holidays. Oh, I got an idea. I want to do this. Check this out. I was very good about leaving you and Chris alone, but I was working.
I did explicitly say I will not be doing any work until the 1st. And then yesterday, because and we're going to be talking about the WWE Network in a second, because the WWE Network was being cancelled at the end of the year, I went back and recorded a few things, including a few WWE ECW shows that would be otherwise hard to get in their full glory, or whatever the opposite of glory is. So, there's going to be some WWE ECW content coming up in the future. Quite a lot of FAFO and what went wrong and all those kinds of things, good things coming up. Before we get into the main meat of the show, because we're going to be talking about a lot of news that's happened in the last couple of weeks, the important things in the wrestling business, there are plugs to be done. One, there's no point anymore because Christmas is over, so the big rush. I always sell quite a lot of books in Christmas, even though I never plug them, I never advertise them beyond the show, and so the rush to purchase is probably over. But if you missed it, Owen Hart and The Rock, 2 books what I wrote, excellent books, best biographies on those 2 gentlemen you will ever get. And then Stevie also has plugs as well. He has the fitness YouTube channel that I encourage you all to go to, and especially with January and self-improvement being the order of the day, what better way to sort of spur you on than watch Stevie Richards help you in your fitness journey. And there is also the cameo, which I never plug. I always forget about that. Stevie Richards has a cameo as well. Links are in the description, as is everything. And most importantly, the Patreon, Stevie.
Yeah, Patreon. I'm actually getting comments on Patreon as we are speaking right now. Yeah, I want to appreciate everybody on Patreon over the holidays. It definitely picked up. And for people that are on Patreon, or James can speak, I try to put something up almost every day and share the entire process and the things that are going on. For the $1 thank you, brother tier, there's the Hogan thing right there. I'm actually going to do a full workflow and show you how I film, I edit, much like the behind the scenes tour. We're going to have one up on YouTube in the coming weeks, but I want to show everybody everything, every detail on that $1 tier as a thank you for your support. Even at the $1 tier, you'll have that coming up very soon. I need to film that. Speaking of books, if people want to do self-improvement and are basically saying my New Year's resolution is to read books or more books, where a better place to start than James and The Rock and Owen Hart autobiographies. Really good stuff. Or not autobiographies, but just biographies. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I've made that mistake. I've made that mistake many, many times as well. You need to change the $1 Patreon thingy to, instead of like, what's it called, the $1 Patreon?
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, you need to change it to, oh, you got me, brother.
Call my wife and son.
Here's $1.
Little Survivor Series humor right there, right? Or Tuesday in Texas.
Oh dear, was it Tuesday in Texas or was it the first one? I always forget.
I
Which one
think
it was.
I think Taker won it at Survivor Series.
He won it at Survivor Series,
Hogan
and then
won
he
it
lost
back
it.
at Tuesday in Texas. Am I wrong with that?
Yeah, that's
so
right.
his broken
That's right.
neck healed in 48 hours. That's, man.
Yeah, what a ploy.
Did he hold?
What a ploy all around.
I'd love to see him in the ER and they start going, we got to cut him and fuse the neck. And he starts hulking up as they're trying to scalpel on there.
When you imagine that, he is wearing his trunks still, of course.
Wait a minute. He wears something besides trunks? I thought he was at Hogan's Beach in his trunks and everything.
Do you remember when Kane went on the weakest link in his outfit?
It was that when they were going back and forth and they were trading insults, him and the lady with the glasses?
Yeah, Ann Robinson. And everyone was just looking at him and just thinking, why have you turned up in your gimmick and like everyone else is just like in t-shirt and jeans?
Hey, if Taker was in there, he would still be in a gimmick. That was back when he protected the whole thing.
Yeah, he would have worn something approximating. Well, hang on, he was American Badass at the time, so he would have just turned up in a leather chaps or something.
That's a good point.
Ric Flair. Did you read this?
Some of it. I wanted to have my true reaction to it, but I do want to say, this one's for you, Dutch. I mean, we're going to divert some of this. He hasn't been mad at Dutch in a while, so time to get mad at me.
Oh, yeah, I think a lot of these topics will also come up in Storytime with Dutch Mantel. Ric Flair was on Busted Open Radio, by the way, like a couple of weeks ago, I guess. I didn't watch it, because why would I? But the episode, they titled it Storytime with Ric Flair. So I thought that was a nice touch, that obviously a little something for Dutch in there. I don't know why they called it that, though, but I'd be interested. Okay. Ric Flair tweeted, I haven't even got the dates, it's somewhere around December 20th. Ric Flair, I've laughed, cried, and thought, and I'm so disappointed in one person that has let me down and I gave my life to. I mean literally sacrificed millions to support her. Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you, Jimmy V, for giving me the inspiration. Every word is capitalized, so you know it's Ric
Did he
Flair
sign
tweet.
-RF like Hogan does with -HH?
No, he doesn't need to.
Woo,
He's
no
the only
woo
person on earth
afterwards?
who puts... No. He only capitalizes
He
every
means
single
business,
word.
doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. Then, Carrie Silkin, former head honcho in Ring of Honor. Who you know, Carrie?
I do know Carrie, yeah.
There we go. He then tweeted in response, and it's not the first time he has, please pay me back the $41,000 you owe me for failing to appear at 4 signings. Sincerely, Carrie Silkin. And then the text message, Ric Flair then received a text message and then he printed it or posted it or screenshot it onto Twitter. Ric Flair then said with the accompanying text I'll read in a second, first person to comment after my post, apparently I'm not the only one who has a problem with you, Carrie. And the text message read, hey Rick, I hope you bury the F out of Carrie Silkin. He's the biggest money mark of all time. He funded Ring of Honor when I ran it and effed me over. He's the worst human of all time. I hate the guy. He is a con artist. By the way, I'll pretend you said 18, lol. He didn't say that last bit.
Well, isn't that the Rob Feinstein perverted justice line from the chat?
I'm figuring it's Rob Feinstein who's text that. Who else would it have been?
But why would Rob make fun of an actual line that he said in a position?
No. I added that bit.
Oh, you added it.
I added the last bit.
That was Feinstein. Oh, my guess is that was him. I was like, why would he type what a weird thing. I mean, maybe he had CTE too. This man, I'm not on social media. For everybody knows, at 53 years old, I feel like I'm too old to deal and go to social media. We have a platform here. We have Patreon. We have other stuff we do with the audience and everything. And just like, it's really like, for us, I just came to the realization of, like you just said in the beginning of the show, only so much energy, only so much time, always tired anyway, because we're working a lot. And I want to put all the focus into this. But Rick, all I can say is, first and foremost, just say who it is. Don't be so cryptic and vague with it. It's like when people put out on social media, ugh, so sick of this. I mean, was he expending, sending hugs, baby, sending hugs, dear, and all this stuff. And for him to set up this thing that someone let him down. Who's Jimmy V, by the way? Is that that's the college football coach that passed away, I believe.
Okay,
I
so not luscious Johnny
no,
Valiant.
no. See, we're in the wrestling bubble too. I think Jimmy V was. I'm not sure.
Oh, Jimmy
Jimmy
Valiant.
Valiant, but he wasn't called Johnny V. Was his brother was called Johnny V.
Yes, I'm sorry,
But
I caught
Jimmy
myself
Valiant
there.
was
Yeah.
never called. But I think that's the college football coach that passed away from cancer. Um, but yeah, when Rick puts that up there, he opens himself up to have Kerry Silkin say what he said, and that's 100% accurate. From Kerry, other people in Ring of Honor, it's Rick's pattern. That's why you had said to me, I think somewhere in the messages, like it's kind of ironic. It's Ric Flair tweet irony. You like you got screwed over. Somebody screwed you over for money. He's been running pyramid scams on robes, Rolexes, and appearances for decades. So, dude, how old is this guy? I mean, just put the phone down, get off. This social media is just a disease that just poisons the water. You and I have similar like opinions about that. It can be used for good, but more times than not, this is what you get.
Yeah, it's always bad when people who follow you just write to you and say, just call the nurse, put the phone down, get her to put you to bed. Wake up tomorrow morning. Yeah. I mean, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Wendy Barlow? Fifi the maid, who I thought he married, but then it might not have been official wedding somehow. I
heard
know.
It wasn't. Is that who he's talking about? I guess.
Well, that is my guess, but I mean, who else could it be? Could it be a daughter? Yeah, as you say, sacrifice millions to support this person. I don't know. I mean, what do you hope to achieve with a tweet like this, apart from one, having a mystery, and then, as you say, two, just all these people point out just how they screwed him over, with all the gyms that he's invested in and the money he's borrowed and not. I mean, High Spots had an issue with him for ages, didn't
Well,
they?
his own best friend, Arn Anderson, that lent him, I think, like $25,000. And then Rick kind of came back and said, you should be happier. You didn't have a career without me. He kind of like did some kind of gaslighting on Arn when he had lent him the money. I'm not sure the exact amount, but it wasn't insignificant. And even if it was, it's still the principle that this is one of your best friends throughout the decades, probably your biggest supporter in and out of the ring. Arn has been a guy that has, like, without Arn in the Four Horsemen being the enforcer, taking the bumps, most of the times even taking the pins for Rick and protecting his character, not to mention probably maybe even outside the ring, whatever, extracurricular stuff. Arn's no pushover. Arn probably got in a few fights for Rick. That's me speculating. Arn is a stand-up friend in that regard, and you can see Rick talking crap to somebody and stirring some people up. My whole thing is Ric Flair is one of the greatest professional wrestlers, one of the greatest characters, one of the greatest performers, one of the safest performers that has ever lived. He's done more 1-hour matches in small buildings, medium-sized buildings, large buildings, all over the territory, 300 and some days a year for many, many years, if not decades. But this all gets forgotten when you get on Twitter or you put up a video of you yelling at somebody at a pizzeria in Gainesville, tipping $1,000 to tell this guy he's a piece of crap. This stuff here, and are we at a point? We talked about it off air before the show because we have elderly family issues, with cognitive stuff, dementia. Are we entering a part of Ric Flair's life where that's creeping up or accelerating? I'm asking an honest question about a human being, not the pro wrestler or anything like that, but the anger, the vitriol, the knee-jerk reaction, the ready, fire, aim, or ready, tweet, aim type of stuff from Ric Flair does come off like he's becoming more unhinged with each, incident that this happens. Do you think this is more of a mental thing that's going on with him?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a breakdown. For whatever reason, I seem to do podcasts or shows or whatever it is exclusively with people who are not fans of Ric Flair. Shane and you and Dutch. I don't know if this is all one just giant coincidence.
I'm a fan
as a person.
As a person, but that's just the way it is. He might not be a fan of mine. I'm sure people aren't fans of mine. I'm sorry, Shane gets very polarizing things, just based on the wrestling career, not based on the man. we're talking about the opposite. Now, like I'm saying with Shane. Shane, as far as a performer, might not be your cup of tea. His promos, the cursing in ECW, the stuff with Ric Flair with the angle from different companies and all this stuff. But as a human being, as a man, I love Shane. Rick, on the other hand, like I said, as a performer, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday, as they used to say. If I wrestled Ric Flair during my career for the majority of it, I would probably still be wrestling today and making more money because I'm wrestling where I did an angle or a title match or a title, whatever it might be. If Ric Flair's involved, Ric Flair drew money. Ric Flair can still draw money, but every time he does this, his stock does go down. There's always going to be somebody that's going to book Ric Flair, by the way. Even if you screw Carey out of 41 grand, how many years? We're talking about almost a decade, right? Like after he retired from WrestleMania 24 in Orlando, he did this stint with Ring of Honor. Am I incorrect with that?
Yeah, I'd say it was more 15 years ago, yeah.
So whenever it was. So basically, these things come up. People are still going to book him. Ric Flair is charismatic. He's friendly when he wants to be. He's not so friendly in some situations when he doesn't want to be. And that just ruins the legacy. And Ric Flair, he is a name that you attach. Everybody talks about their legacy. But Ric Flair has a real, genuine, legendary legacy that he is eroding and destroying with each time stuff like this happens. I don't know where we're at on the scale. We're pretty far down the line because it's been, I can just think of maybe 6, 8, 10 instances that are like this. There's probably more.
Yeah, do you know what it really was? Yeah, I think it's a complete lack of self-awareness. I think it's a complete lack of self-awareness. I don't even know if it's a dementia thing.
Do you think
years
it's
and years ago?
I hate to interrupt you again. I'm just on that point.
Yeah, no.
Do you think it's that Rick, because a lot of wrestlers do this. They can't let go and they can't move on and they can't reinvent themselves outside of the business. Do you think there's?
He's the epitome of that.
What's that?
He's the epitome of he cannot let go.
Well, that's what I mean. Do you think it's? Do you know
wrestling.
who I am in his mind every time something happens? I'm Ric Flair, and that's just the way it is.
Mm. Yeah, but the thing is, like the people on his own ESPN 30 for 30 documentary, like Triple H, I got the impression that he basically cut ties with him. And Arn Anderson's cut ties with him. And people who've been close to him for decades have cut ties with him. Because he's just too exhausting, I guess, to be around and always just about himself. I guess. I've never spoke to him. That's the impression I get. But I remember as a fan watching an episode, and a lot of longer time fans will remember this, an episode of Legends of Wrestling Roundtable, where he was invited on. And, I loved that show. That was one of WWE's first real hits that wasn't, actual in-ring based. It was studio based. It was a great concept. And they had Ric Flair on. And it was always, Michael Hayes was there and whoever else was there. And all he would do was talk about, he was just so obnoxious and so up his own arse. And he had to bring up Shane Douglas. Well, where's he these days? He's working at Target. What you mean he was making 6 figures in a managerial role because he could let wrestling go? Like somehow having an honest job and not being bankrupt and having 5 divorces and embarrassing yourself on the weekly, is somehow more laudable than having a real job in the real world. And, when Mick Foley, I think, was sat next to him, he talked down to Mick like he was a piece of shit on his shoe. And I was like, you work together, for God's sake. And Mick's, I'm sure a very, very nice person and just took it and just, thought, well, that's just Rick. I mean, you can't. That was my first exposure to what I guess Ric Flair is like in real life. He puts himself on this pedestal, so above everybody else, but that he feels like he's literally above everyone else, and you should be shining his shoes and complimenting him all the way. I've met a couple of wrestlers over the years that are like that, where they think that you should just defer to them and revere them. And everything they've ever done.
Everybody's a mark, whether you're in or out of the business, because they're so far above everybody. Yeah, I watched some of his Legends Roundtables. This is the trick. This is why guys like myself, Maven, and I would put Shane and other people in that category as well. It's hard for wrestlers or professional athletes or entertainers to speak about other people and put them over before themselves. That seems to be the most difficult thing for a lot of, and I think that's what differentiates this show, Maven's Channel, and other ones like it to be able to do that and remove yourself. Like I said, I appreciate Rick for a performer. Whatever he is as a person doesn't affect me, but he still wakes up every day thinking, I'm better than Stevie Richards. I'm better than Mick Foley. Even Shawn Michaels, the unwarranted, and we're talking about two people, that we've talked about on a personal level, Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels. Shawn didn't deserve Rick to be standing by a TV in this random, unprovoked, so at least unprovoked in the video sense, and stand there and tell him you're a phony Christian and you did the vague. It was like this vague tweet, but in video form, and he's just like, whatever. I think when Rick doesn't get his way or he doesn't get what he feels he deserves, he goes scorched earth. He did it with AEW. He did it multiple times with WWE. And I would say this, there's a legacy that selfishly I wish with Ric Flair would have unfolded. You want to hear, like, besides wrestling, you know what I enjoyed the most that Rick used to talk about? And I was like, this is amazing. He can make money doing this. When he would talk about football, basketball, or other sports, he sounded every bit as good as any of those sports analysts. He has a great appreciation, a love, and a passion. And one thing he didn't do that was paramount during these things, he never brought it back to himself. He was talking about all the athletes, the games, and all that stuff. And I said, this is the next career for Rick. Even in a cameo role, I think he's been on ESPN a bunch of times. He talked about it on his podcast a bunch of things. He talked about football when he was doing it with Mark and Adam, maybe a little bit with Conrad, but he had a real knack and a charisma and knowledge for that stuff. And I feel like stuff like this would hold back a legitimate network from saying, nah, we're not. That's an embarrassment. We're not doing that. He could have had a second career doing that, making really good money, doing what he does anyway, watching sports.
Yeah, it wasn't Conrad's fault. So obviously when Mark Madden and Rick had their falling out, when Rick decided he wanted to get back into podcasting and then he was with Conrad, and like, man, Rick ruined those shows. It was not Conrad's fault. I'll tell you that for nothing. And like poor Conrad, he's in a really difficult position.
It's family.
Yeah, it's family. So there you go. And, that got cancelled. And yeah, it was Rick who ruined it. He's one of those podcasters who should have done so much better because of just purely his name and his experience, and then didn't. And it's his fault.
I have no idea. I have no answers except for the fact that I appreciated Ric Flair and everything he's done. A lot of people that you might think on a personal level, I just don't want to have anything to do with. But that doesn't make me, as I repeated multiple times, I don't look at that and go, Rick is a jerk, or the Rick Doubletree incident. Remember that? That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, he really does, either in a loud sense or in a quiet roundtable situation, he will always try to step on other people to make himself more than what they are.
It's insecurity.
Oh, 100%.
I think that's, yeah.
That's what every wrestler gets. Dude, we all want to make pretend we're somebody else. I got into wrestling because I didn't like who Michael Manna was. I wanted to make pretend I was somebody else. Insecurity is it's the linchpin, the cornerstone of the entire wrestling business. It wouldn't be a wrestling business or wrestlers if there wasn't insecurity.
CM Punk and Seth Rollins promo. So this is on Monday Night Raw, as the most recent one, as we record this. And I'll tell you what, next week, maybe we should do the Netflix debut, because there's going to be a heck of a lot of stories and news coming out of that first Raw on Netflix. That being said, first thing they say is because they're going to be fighting wrestling on the Netflix debut of WWE Raw. First thing is, with the promo, I wanted to get your opinion on this, is Seth Rollins said that CM Punk took his ball and went home. And CM Punk straight away said that is the most worn-out industry cliche cooked up by a promoter to turn fans against the boys. Man, did he nail that. In one sentence, really concise. What a great response to that sentence.
This felt like they had their bullet points, much like Punk and Triple H a few years back. They were literally shooting on each other but I don't think that they knew what they were really going to say. They probably had like a basic blueprint of let's hit some points here and here, but it felt like the reactions and everything, or the non-reactions, not the big NXT face. It felt like it was real. Oh my God, I can't believe he kicked out. I didn't even cover him. Uh, but haha, we got to get that in. Sorry, Jeff. So looking at this, it looked about as real as you can get. And like the problem with this segment, I will say this is the problem with the segment, is the rest of the show. The identity of this segment was right on. This should be the identity of WWE in a way. Not every single angle, but you need to bring reality into it. This was more like a UFC style back and forth between DC and John Jones. Remember those where they're like literally off camera and saying, I'm going to kill you. Oh, come on, man, kill me. It was like what Seth did with Riddle, which was a direct copy off of, DC and John Jones's thing, split screen and all that stuff. This here is what's missing from wrestling. And it doesn't work like week one. You don't have somebody debut and you cut the promo. There needs to be a history. There needs to be stuff to do. Everything they touched on is a callback to 5-10 years, maybe even more, because Steve Austin took his ball and went home. McMahon said that way back on the Brock Lesnar. I think it was 2002, 2003, Atlanta, Georgia.
2002. Yeah. Yep.
So these are big, heavy callbacks that as a fan, that Ben Hameen always says, we're waiting for that moment when we can get the payoff for remembering stuff from 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then we get they gave it to me. That's what this promo did. And then guess what? Punk, for some reason, they got to turn Seth Rollins heel. Because like you said, he just kept Punk just kept beating on him. And every point Rollins made was the cliche, I'm the heart and soul, you're a cancer in the locker room. And Punk came back with real world, real life truths that made Seth look like a crybaby. Did you get that feeling?
I'll always say this, it's tough to take Seth Rollins seriously when he's wearing like a man blouse.
That's
or a weird
another
suit
point.
and
That's a whole nother show.
I get looking flashy, but it always, for me with Seth, it looks like he's dressing up to play a part, whereas someone like Randy Savage, it looked like that's how Randy Savage would dress. Is that just me?
Well, but Randy Savage also had such an intensity that Seth Rollins doesn't have, where no matter what Randy wore, you'd be like, oh, I can't make fun of this guy because I just don't know what Randy Savage was savage. I mean, it's just like elevator pitch 5 seconds. Randy Savage, he's a savage, which, he was very intense in and out of the ring. I was going to say, like, it reminded me of the Avengers where Iron Man and Thor were fighting in the forest. And Iron Man goes, does mother knoweth you weareth her drapes? That's
oh, you're gonna disappoint me. I've never seen any of the Marvel films. I just hate superhero movies, dude.
Oh my God.
Don't do them.
I
watched my first film in months.
If you tell me you've never seen the Dark Knight trilogy, the Nolan trilogy, like I'm gonna reach right. I
saw the middle one.
Okay, The Dark Knight is the best movie ever made.
I saw the Dark Knight.
All right, that's the best movie ever made. I'll give you a break. I was going to do the Robert Tilton and just reach through the TV, not for your donation, but to strangle you.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, you're grabbing for my donations. Okay, so Punk... Punk left of his own accord, he says, because he refused to deal with the WWE nonsense. I'm sure you know how that goes. Seth says... he went on to his buddy's podcast to tear WWE down, then he took a big chunk of change to go to the competition. How'd that work out for you? The Sarah Palin line there.
Can we stop right there?
What do you think of these? Yes. What do you think of the... Oh, why? Do you want Sarah Palin?
No. I just wanted to stop right there because here we go.
Yeah.
This is a corporate ass-kissing type of like to get over with the office. That's why I feel like he's going to turn heel. Because Punk is literally saying, in the next line, yeah, Punk, I love the place I worked. I just hated the guy I worked for. And he loved you. Like, you're literally just making him, I don't know. They could turn Punk heel or just keep it in a gray area. But what I'm looking at right there is like Punk won by a landslide in this promo war. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make that point that Seth, I could see Seth's eyes and his body language of the pacing back and forth and the nervous energy that he was just getting cooked and he didn't know except for I'm here for these people. I'm a workhorse. All the things he's been saying that guess what? Nobody cares about. That's not cool. That's pandering, which will turn you
Do
heel.
you know what's Do you know what's funny? It's almost like he's stuck in the Vince McMahon era with those responses. Whereas CM Punk almost feels, I know he isn't, but it feels like he's a true independent in that sense. And and you'll know this, and you'll speak onto this more, I'm sure, where promoters try and turn a wrestler into a bad person for daring to leave for 1, their own sanity, 2, their health, or 3, a better payday. How dare they?
He's a cancer in the locker room because he's smartening up the boys and the girls. That's why he's a cancer in the locker room. Yeah, you're very much right with that. You're right on board with that. Here's what I saw with the promo. Seth Rollins is cutting a Vince McMahon pro wrestling type promo. I call it pre-tape ease. Here's what a backstage segment. Hello, James. I'm Stevie Richards, and I, Stevie Richards, am going to tell you, James, about the match out there between myself and this person who I'm going to say their name, who's standing right next to me. You, James, and I, Stevie Richards, are going to team up in that very, the pauses. And Punk felt like, because he was one, Punk felt like a crap talking UFC fighter or a legitimate person throwing shade on another athlete and just talking. Like that's Punk is conversational. Seth with the appearance and the words, it's so over the top, it comes off as disingenuous. Did you get that impression too?
Yeah, always. I mean, that's why I always say that I think a lot of people don't understand CM Punk's, or I always said Bryan Danielson's appeal. I think there's a subsect of people who don't understand either of their appeal because they're, not as big or they don't look like the star they think they should look like or whatever. And the fact is that they never ever talked at you. They talked to you. And I think that's what's earned them fans for life. And currently with Punk, because Danielson's retired at least from full-time competition at the moment. We don't know if, permanently. But with Punk, he's the perfect example of someone who's, yes, polarizing in a lot of the things he's done in real life. But the fact is that he's one Google Gobble, one of us kind of thing. He's someone in the crowd, basically, and he's talking to them. And he's not talking in a stilted, trying to remember, what his next line is. I mean, what is acting? Acting is reacting. And he seems to be pretty much the only person who reacts, whereas everyone else is just memorizing their lines.
Yeah, there's a certain disingenuous nature to Seth, too, because Seth has a reputation, probably well-earned, of trying to throw every character and gimmick and look and taking from the Joker and all this stuff. Everything seems like an act of desperation to try to get over and try to get relevant with that. Recently, he literally fell into his own, but it's based on the Joker movie, not the first one. Maybe it'll end up like the second one with Joaquin Phoenix. But
I was just going to say the first one was with Adam West, wasn't it?
No,
and that would have been Frank Gorshin.
No, but the first Joker movie with the dancing and this and that, that's from...
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking Folie à Deux. I was just thinking
Seth,
the first time
that's
the
what
Joker's
Seth's
on film.
going to probably end up like if he keeps doing promos with Punk. He's going to have to do a musical to save it. But when it comes down to is when Seth, like you said, talking at the crowd and trying to get a pop from the crowd rather than Punk. And Punk, too, his truth has always been with his actions. Punk has always been CM Punk. He's always been, like you said, the voice of the voiceless, the anti-hero, all this stuff. He's been pretty damn consistent throughout his entire career and especially in WWE. That's what lends to his credibility over Seth. Because all people looking at Seth saying, well, what gimmick are we going to get next? What's he going to do next? What's this? It feels like he's a gimmick and not a person. Punk feels like whether you like him or not, he's a person. He's a human being and he's real. Now, here's the point too. I think Seth, in a way, people sing the song and do the thing, but they're reacting to the song, not him. And also in the same vein too, it's just authenticity. That's what I'm gonna my last point. You can tell Seth is playing a wrestling character and Punk is Phil Brooks. Right there, it's over.
So we talked about taking your ball and going home, but then Seth goes on to say you went on your buddy's podcast, which he means Colt Cabana, doesn't name him by name. Then you went to the competition, AEW, but doesn't mention AEW by name. And then CM Punk mentions Vince McMahon, doesn't mention him by name, of course, but they're referencing these people. And there's two questions here. One, is it a taboo in 2024 to mention the competition? Still, it seems to be. And two, I forgot what the second one is. Answer the first one. Is it a taboo? Should you be mentioning the competition or referencing other companies?
WWE doesn't. Now, this was the saying that I think Vince had said, Vince McMahon. I know it was passed on to other people within the company, so I don't know if it came directly from him. When you're number one, you never talk about number two. When you're number two, you come out with guns blazing to try to knock number one out. You remember even during the Monday Night Wars, they didn't really even do that, even though WCW was beating them. But with what they recreated and getting Mike Tyson, getting Austin over, you had The Rock, Taker with new life in him with the Attitude Era, and all the new young stars coming up during that Val, Edge, Christian. Then after that, I mean, you had a series of eras there where you could potentially be number one. So long story short, it's good for a zinger. It's good for whatever. I think what your question is it taboo? Because if you mention it too much, will we go and check it out? Just like when Tony Schiavone and Eric Bischoff gave away the finish when Mick Foley won the WWF title. If you give it away too much, the curiosity will bring you over to the next product, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, there's two things really, because they didn't mention, I mean, it's all part of the story. It's all part of a true story, which is great. You know, tell the fans truth A, B, and C, and then when you veer off to the work in D, then, you know, the fans will, it's a great saying. Here's the other thing, is that AEW's more than WWE recently have been criticised for this, and I think rightly so, is that they are expecting the fans just to know everything. Whereas in this promo, you're expected to know that Punk went on a podcast with Colt Cabana, that they then got sued for. Punk tried to, quote-unquote, tear the company down. He went over to the competition. It didn't work out well. The fan at home is expected to know all of these things. But it's not the entire interview. But, you know, a lot of the crowd, you know, reacted to it. So obviously these stories are well known enough that you don't need to explain it further. Whereas AEW will, let's say, they'll bring in an import from New Japan. They basically won't explain very much about them. But, you know, the fans, a few thousand fans in attendance will basically, for the most part, know who they are. But most fans at home won't. So you know what I mean? There's some sort of, there's filling in the blanks.
It's like gaslighting in a way.
There's having to do your own research.
It's like gaslighting in a way. I agree with that. Now, here's how you fix that. They go on Raw Talk, or one of them go on Raw Talk and the other goes on the Smack Talk or whatever show they have where it's a talk show and you can get the social media and the YouTube numbers, do an entire shoot interview. Or have them both on in that way and say, you have to go to our Twitter page. You have to go to our YouTube channel because Punk and Seth lay it all out on the line and they're not censored. They're not told you can't mention this, you can't mention that, and they go at each other. You can get big numbers off that and have it as a compliment. So your main TV show isn't affected by saying AEW, Vince McMahon, all these things. But on YouTube or social media, gloves are off. You should get some pretty big numbers. And if you use social media as a compliment to your TV product or your pay-per-view product, I feel like they can do even better for both and raise both.
One more thing about CM Punk. I don't know if you want me to bring up the video, but CM Punk makes a save and a towel. Now, this was on a house show recently. I think it was in the loop between Christmas and New Year's. And unbelievably, I know I keep bringing up Dutch in this. This might be a callback to Dutch Mantel, because he did this back in Memphis in the late 80s when he saved a 16-year-old Jeff Jarrett, from a beating.
That was him selling. Jeff, ow, ow,
Well, is that what you
ow,
did?
ow. No, I'm just doing that.
Oh, right. I thought you had insider knowledge of the weird noises he made.
He doesn't make weird noises, but he did.
That's fine. Uh, on the Dutch turned up like in his towel and shampoo in his hair. You know, the hair in his head rather than hair everywhere else. And I think he may have originated that. I'm not sure. That being said, CM Punk then does a run in a towel. So if you bear with me 1 minute, I will get it. I'll get the video up for you.
Can I talk about this overarching theme sometimes about having too much fun on the house shows? I feel like that's a double-edged sword. Like Punk was dancing during his match with Ludwig Kaiser and doing things out of character. And to me, it's like, in a way, having fun is good, but in another way, the people have paid to see what they want to see from TV, the exact product, kind of like playing music or other things. Do you see my point with that? There's a limit to it. You can have fun, but when you make a little bit of a joke out of the fact that people want to watch, they're there for matches. God, I think I've seen this already.
So I think must have been WWE because whoever's filming it's in the aisle.
Yeah, they do their own. I think they do their own social media stuff.
Yeah. Okay, the shower cap.
Was his post-Cretion that just for men?
What do you think he's no, he's still got grey in his beard, hasn't he?
I think that's just a rib. He grabbed the shower cap. Somebody probably dared him. You won't do that, and he ran out. That's what I believe.
Yeah. So go on. What? So you think there's a danger of having too much fun on the house
No,
shows?
I don't think the fun is fun. The business, being a pro wrestler and being able to travel around the world and wrestle and make money and be a star and make passive income off merchandise and other stuff, it's already fun. It's stressful, but it's already fun. I don't have a problem with this because people seem to enjoy it and are like, oh my God. But at the same time, do you pay? I mean, it looks like the match was over anyway, right? So it's kind of,
Oh yeah.
it doesn't interfere with that. The shower cap is strictly a dare. The towel is a dare. The shower cap, maybe like he said, I'm going to be even more ridiculous with this. I'm neutral on it. If the fans enjoyed it, it's a holiday thing. If you do it on every house show, then it becomes a little obnoxious. They're there to watch matches and have some fun and see the product that they have on TV.
Now, towels don't always go well in wrestling. One scene that I remember very well is it was a live Raw. William Regal does a backstage segment and a towel that he's meant to have had on a couple of seconds before it actually was on. Do you remember this?
I've heard this story. I don't think I've seen the segment.
I'm not showing the segment if that's what you were hoping for.
No, I don't want to see naked men on the show.
So anyway, yeah, William Regal just turns up. He's method acting, and just for whatever reason, he just sort of like walks around the corner, I guess, before putting his towel on. He's got his wood out on national TV, international TV, for all to see for a second. Then just carries on like it's completely normal.
Now, what was he in the background of an interview, and he just came out naked, or was he supposed to say something?
No, he was saying something. He was part of it. Do I have to find it?
I mean, your description is enough. I feel like maybe it was just a long tour and he just did he get distracted and you're just like, okay, well, I think I have my towel on. Oh no, I don't. Maybe I should put it on.
Do you know? I'm gonna share the screen very quickly again. Am I? Yeah, I am. One sec.
Did you pull this off WWE Network?
No. Well, unfortunately not. They would have edited it, I'm sure, as well. If you can just see the image there, apparently that's a screen grab from it.
Now he's had multiple segments like this throughout his career in WWE. I think there was another towel segment somewhere down the line. I don't think this was the first one.
Can you believe there's actually a website or a blog that's got the top 10 best towel segments in wrestling, or the best?
Is mine in there with Val
including
Venus,
Chad
where I
Gable?
said I forgot trunks under the towel and I had to run back. We had a tag match. We had a tag match on Heat, my early days when I was imitating people, and I came out and did the whole thing, and then I went like this and looked down, He's like, what? And I go, I forgot trunks. He's like, get out of here and go put some trunks on.
We've got Taz. It's funny, my and Suzuki as well with the on the head. My cousin always used. It's the one funny thing he ever said in his life. He always used to call those towels the brain warmer. So the old brain warmer on. Go to the ring.
So what's a shower cap?
Val
Is
Venus
that the brain protector or the
that's from the Rays from
dollar store
space,
helmet?
I guess.
How's that?
It'll like I don't know, maybe what's like a jellyfish kind of gimmick for the night. Who knows? Right, we'll move on.
If I knew about it, I would wear a shower cap during this segment. That's how.
Okay, next on the agenda, this is something that came up, caught my eye very much so, and it was announced as, if not one of, maybe the greatest opening match to a pay-per-view ever. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher at AEW's World's End pay-per-view. Not just, unsurprisingly, posited by Dave Meltzer. Some other people have also agreed as well, and Will Ospreay has his fans, and deservedly so. That being said, would you qualify it as being one of, if not the best match ever on a pay-per-view? Because apparently, according to Meltzer as well, Will Ospreay versus Okada on the same show, this in the Continental Classic, that was in the finals, was even better than the opener. So Will Ospreay might be the first person to ever get 5 stars plus, 2 5-star plus matches on the same show. That being said, there have been many great opening matches on pay-per-views over the years. What do you think of this match, and does it qualify as one of the greatest?
Oh man. This is kind of a contradictory statement within the one sentence. The greatest opening match ever. What you're doing here, I'm trying to put my words into this because I like the match. I watched the match. I liked the match when it was in isolated segments of the match, not the match as a whole. And you explained it in the show notes, and I fully agree with that. I really want to do that segment where I explain the psychology of the professional wrestling card, not just the professional wrestling match, the card. The opening match is not supposed to be the best match on the show. The opening match is supposed to be the best warm-up to get people excited for the actual show. It's supposed to feature no blood, really no outside stuff, maybe a little bit, but not. And how many matches did this pay-per-view have, James?
Oh, AEW usually has like 10.
Okay, let's call it 10. Okay, you have 9 more matches and even segments and other things and backstage and pay-per-view packages. You have a lot of stuff for the fans to digest. So they're not exhausted, not only till the main event, these people could have been exhausted by match 2 with what Will and Kyle did. Now I'm going to start off with saying Will Ospreay is one of the greatest talents out there, has the greatest potential, I think, in a lot of different ways. Kyle Fletcher, I wasn't familiar with. I know he shaved his head for this match. He turned on Will. They were best friends. I get it a little bit. Schiavone and the commentators did a really good job explaining to me, watching this, a little bit of backstory on why they're fighting. Not enough, but more than usual. Now, when he's saying the greatest opening match ever, Dave Meltzer has no clue the psychology of the professional wrestling match, much less the psychology of the professional wrestling card. This opening match wasn't supposed to basically throw everything out there and then follow that. And I don't know, like I said, I can't quite put it in the exact words that I'm trying to, because there was a lot to like about this match. But I feel like what you said in the pre-show was perfect. What do you remember about that match? What was memorable?
Not really anything. That's the problem. There's so much motion. There's so much.
They
and it
started
follows
with
the exact same pattern.
They started with the new thing.
The thing. They start with the thing, but it's a different thing. And then another thing happens. And then it sort of just hits the beats of what I think modern wrestling is, to the point that I always just think, well, I don't need to watch this ever, because it's always sort of the same. Very athletic, very, very intricate, and it's always sort of the same.
I'm going to tell you my favorite part
I
of the
mean,
match.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
many parts that were some of my favorites. After the new thing, the alternative thing was done, and Kyle got the heat on Will, and Kyle was stalking him, and he slowed down to a pace where I could watch and say, "Oh, he's beating him up. Oh man, he's." But they just wrestled a pretty style, and I'm supposed to like and hate each guy in separate ways, and I don't. It's like, okay, that's the thing. That's it. Then they won outside early. I know Will got busted open, but that's another thing. An opening match where starting with the thing is okay because the fans got excited. Then you slowed it down to an actual storyline based, properly paced, in the right gear pro wrestling match that I can watch and I digest and figure out. And the commentary is telling me how I'm supposed to feel about these guys. But then you go to the outside, you do an apron power bomb to them, you bust them open, and you do all sorts of, you mix between Japanese strong style, hardcore match, bloody match, all these different things in the first match. Then Will, this is where I got confused, and you can agree. Kyle's beating him up, and then Will starts firing up, and they do the fighting spirit back and forth with the chops. Then fast forward, and Will fires up again, and they start headbutting each other off the ropes. Now, there was pieces towards the end of both of those spots that were really good, but the other stuff meant nothing. Then I'll say this too. I love in theory the fact that Will did get busted open in that match and still had to wrestle against Okada. In theory, that's good. What I would rather have, if you really want to get Will Ospreay over, that match is not first. That match happens, and guess what the very next match is? Okada versus Ospreay. He doesn't have any time to rest, any time to recover, no time to even get the blood out of his eyes. That's something. Even the commentary with that, talking about, hey, it's hard to see. You're trying to wink it out. Every close up they had of them, especially Will Ospreay, and that face, I'm like, not to make fun of Vince McMahon, right here. I can get behind that. But then you make me forget about all that with just moves that mean nothing in the same exact gear all across the board. And then you win, well, you won with Styles Clash, right?
Yeah, which I thought, because
So now
Ospreay
you're
does,
doing another guy's
a lot of his
finish from
moves, and then he does someone else's. Yeah,
you didn't get over. You're just stealing AJ Styles' finish. I'm only giving this critique because I like Will, and I can appreciate when Will got on social media a while back and said, I need to change my style. My body is breaking down. And when he and Kyle were doing, I don't even want to call it a WWE style, but a standard pro wrestling style heat and even parts of a comeback and hope spots, I can get behind that. But then you ruined it with the new alternative thing. You ruined it with blood. You ruined it with literally power bombing them on the apron within 5 minutes of the match starting, right? Somewhere in the first 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just became stuff, moves, spots, and literally nothing else. Did you feel that way?
I've got to ask you a question. So, what is Will Ospreay's wrestling style? What would you describe it as in 1 or 2 words?
Just Japanese. That's all I could think of.
What's Kyle Fletcher's wrestling style in 1 or 2 words?
It felt like more American, more big man type
Oh,
WWE
really?
in that match a little bit.
I was gonna say that their wrestling styles are exactly the same, pretty much.
Well, I can look at nuances and styles and everything and see that Will is a lot more seasoned, experienced, and comfortable with the moves and the character that he has. And by the way, I don't even know he doesn't have a character, but I'm saying when he does moves, I use this term all the time. He puts stink on everything. His face, the way he moves. Kyle Fletcher feels like, I hate to say it but I only want to say this so he can get better. He's a creator wrestler. That's what he reminds me of.
My point in why I was asking you those was they seem to wrestle pretty much exactly the same and do the exact same moves. So why is one a babyface and one a heel? Because I mean, yeah, one might be frowning a bit more, and then the commentators are giving you an explanation of why they have fallen out. But there never really seems to be. MJF's very good at this kind of thing, but he's like one of the outliers. Is when someone turns heel, they completely change their style to give you some reason to boo them, throughout the match. And I think that's something that's missing a lot, especially, well, just all over the board, really. It's just everyone's doing the same high-flying, crowd-pleasing moves all the time, whether they're babyface or heel. And there's... Ric Flair's the perfect example. He would poke you in the eyes and kick you in the balls. He would give you a reason to boo. Ricky Morton would give you a reason to cheer. He would have what seemed like tears in his eyes, reaching out for the fans. Help me. I need you to get me through this. Then he would fire up and do whatever. I mean, there's such a clear demarcation between a good guy and a bad guy that it's easy to know who to root for the entire way through the match. Whereas if this was a microcosm with no commentary, what's the difference between them, really?
You know what? You bring up an excellent point, and that's something that I had on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't quite translate it. That's exactly it. Anytime Kyle took over, he literally just out wrestled or did a move to counter rather than poking in the eyes, raking the eyes. Like he's, he's literally, and the things he wanted to do to get heat, and he went back to it multiple times, was literally licking and wiping the blood. I mean, it's just like, why? Now, the Kawada kicks, I like those in theory because he had white kick pads on. That's good. But guess what? The Kawada kicks look like crap. You're hitting someone hard, and they look like little tap dance toe things. And then when you hit with the super kick or that, dude, the one move Will does, he's got to jam somebody's jaw or jack somebody's jaw once in a while, is when he's behind him and he does a super kick to the front. Dude, that could be a finish. I mean, there's so many things that could be finishes that aren't finishes, and we did a clip about that, so check it out. But everything Will does could conceivably be a finish. And what he finished Kyle off with was another dude's finish. So we can touch on the CM Punk Seth Rollins thing and say it should be taboo to do a finishing move that is a finish for a 1, 2, 3 that another top guy in another company's doing. I mean, is it a trolling AJ or is it tribute to AJ? What's the point in doing that move for a finish?
I think Excalibur, correct me if I'm wrong, said Styles Clash or almost corpse cat and then just called it Clash unless someone was talking over him. So I don't know if that was a trademark to whatever. There's one more thing. Right, so when I say you enjoyed this, because you know me, I'm a miserable bastard anyway, and for the most part. And I just see this match as just, oh, well, it's just an AEW style match, like 1,000 other AEW style matches. It all blurs together for me. As you say, you had the headbutt back and forth, the chops back and forth. And this is one that always gets me. I think it was a Poison Rana, the backwards Hurricane Rana. And then Kyle Fletcher took it, immediately stood up, did the adrenaline comeback, and then hit him once, and then it's a double down. That's like every single match, man. It's trope after trope after trope, and that's all I see. I can't enjoy wrestling matches anymore because all I see are tropes that are used in so many matches. There's just no differentiation between. That's why I love watching Superstars. They're 2 minutes, someone dies in the ring, basically, and you get to see all the big moves, and then you move on to the next.
I'm going to tell you what happened. Here's a very simple lesson for anybody out there that wants to be a wrestler, current wrestler, and doesn't get what I'm trying to say. Whenever you're at your lowest point, say Will Ospreay, see Kyle Fletcher shouldn't have done any of that because that's a babyface thing to summon up that one last move to even the odds during the heat to start a double down into a comeback. You only do that once. When Will Ospreay hit him with that clothesline out of nowhere, should have been a double down and the beginning of the comeback right there. They literally reset. That's why like 2 sets of heat in a tag match, it's a very, very dangerous proposition if you're not experienced because 2 sets of heat have to be individualized in their own way. The first comeback before the second set of heat needs to be extremely short. So the second comeback means something. So in a singles match, it's even dumbed down even more. When I'm at my lowest point in the heat, and I'm bleeding, by the way, in the first match, which is let's not even get into that. But I'm at my lowest point. I'm bleeding. I may have another match to do. So why am I having this super long match to open up the show? And when I come up and I hit the clothesline out of nowhere, that was the trump card. That evened the odds to give me enough breath to get up on my feet and start fighting back. They did that 3 times, I think. And at least one was Kyle Fletcher. It might have been 4. 2 fighting spirits. What if everything is fighting spirit? Nothing's fighting spirit. If everything's a finish, nothing's a finish except for the guy that works for the other company. I can't get past that.
I'm going to ask the big question in a second, but I want to bring this up. This AEW Dynamite last week as we record this. I want you to keep in mind that Daniel Garcia on AEW Dynamite this is from Kyle Fletcher, took a brainbuster onto the apron, right into a last ride powerbomb, right into the pin, and he kicked out too. And it's like, it doesn't make Daniel Garcia look tough. It makes the wrestling look Bush League.
You prostitute your finish. If you keep hitting it.
Well, he prostituted everybody's finish there. I mean, no, has anyone ever won a match? Right. So a couple of weeks ago, we said, has anyone won a match doing a move to the outside, then they rolled them in and pinned them? One person wrote in Cactus Jack used to do the elbow from the apron to the outside onto the concrete. He did get some pins from that. I don't know if anyone else did. But has anyone ever got any pins from dropping someone on the apron?
Never. Even Kevin Owens would do the power bomb into the apron, and that's another thing. Kevin Owens is known for the power bomb to the apron, but you did it less than 5 minutes from Kyle Fletcher to Ospreay. I saw that brainbuster on the apron. By the way, we were looking for a compilation of AEW, these bumps, the brainbuster on the apron, that tombstone, all that stuff. Guess what I found out when you said, send me the link? They have this channel has it, if not every week, every month, AEW's craziest moments, craziest bumps. I'm like, it happens that often where you can put a compilation together every month or every couple of weeks. That's a dangerous, dangerous trend. That's not cool.
As I say, I watched that match twice back to back, and I couldn't remember any of it. It just washed over me.
And that's a disservice.
Just completely.
That's a disservice to them. That's why I'm saying this for Will and Kyle and any talent out there. I don't come from a place of these stupid kids and you don't know. I'm not shouting at the clouds. I'm not an angry old man. The thing I am angry about is the fact that you guys worked your asses off, legitimately probably came out of it somewhat injured. You gigged. Well, you have a cut on your forehead now. You could have bled out. You could have hit a vein. So much could have went wrong. Then you had to wrestle another match. So your blood loss, you could have got concussed. There could have been so much. And guess what you got for it as far as the memories, the moments that fans can talk about for years and 10 years when they're coming to get a combo at a convention and they ask you about that. That's not happening. So you just wasted an opportunity to create another moment or memory in your legacy. Sure, it's impressive, but outside of the new thing, what do we remember? Nothing. So I come from a place where I want you to make as much passive income as possible. And Will and Kyle, AEW fans, Dave Meltzer, everybody, get as mad at me as you want. Guess what? I'll say this, and I don't say it very often because I look at it from both ends. I'm right and you're wrong.
That being said, what is the best opening match to a pay-per-view of all time? I've got a list of a few examples if you wish, but have you got any in mind first?
I don't have any. The only thing I can think of is that opening match between D'Lo Brown and Val Venus at the Garden. We talked about it before, was the Survivor Series. And
SummerSlam 98.
I'm sorry, 98.
Yep.
And I would say even that was a bit overbooked for an opening match.
It was a shitty ending as well because it ended like a DQ.
No, that was DQs in an opening match. I'll say this: the worst thing you can do is have a DQ, or even in general, have a screw job finish in the opening match. I would have the babyface go over in every opening match to warm the crowd up. But let me think on that. What do you think the greatest opening match ever is?
Okay, the most famous one that people would say was Owen Hart and Bret Hart.
I was
from
just going to
WrestleMania
say that
10.
WrestleMania
Just
10.
it's just wonderful.
Perfect.
What a wonderful storytelling, tight, logical match.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. I am excited about that match because I was about to say it as I was talking. This is a one-to-one analogy. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, then Will Ospreay and Okada. Bret Hart versus Owen. Owen goes over, sets the table. Bret Hart versus Yokozuna and wins the world title to end WrestleMania 10. The perfect bookend to any show that I've seen. That's my opinion.
I'll give you a couple more examples. This is just from some Reddit, so these are fans that have submitted it. Daniel Bryan versus Triple H, WrestleMania 30. I want to add, I remember a really good match between Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt from that year as well. That might have been the Royal Rumble. That was just a really good opener. Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, SummerSlam 2002. They're mostly saying the same things here. Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch, Hell in a Cell 2019. Mankind versus Triple H, SummerSlam 1997. That was in the cage. Dean Malenko and Ultimo Guerrero from Starrcade 1996. I'll give you another one. Mark Mero, when he was Johnny B. Bad in WCW towards the end of his run, he always seemed to be in the opening match, and he always seemed to have a good match. And one specifically, I think it was Fall Brawl, must have been 95. Johnny B. Bad versus Brian Pillman. I remember that being excellent.
Yeah. Scorpio and Benoit from Super Bowl III, too, opening match. I talked about. I think also in opening matches, Taz and Jerry Lawler, one night stand where Taz couldn't do too much, but they had an angle to open up where Jerry Lawler slapped Joey Styles, I think, at the broadcast table, went to the ring. Then Joey jumped on his back. He flipped him, and Taz hit him with it was just a perfect little warm up to hide any weaknesses or anything like that. And it started off with a story with that. And then Taz joined Joey on commentary. So that was like a perfect storm of getting Lawler out of there, putting Taz over, and then putting him on commentary.
There's a couple from NXT as well, which aren't pay-per-views, I understand, but Sami Zayn versus Cesaro, Aleister Black and Ricochet versus the War Raiders in TakeOver New York. Has anyone else written anything? Miz versus Rollins to start off Backlash 2018, this person has said. So they get a Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis, Bash at the Beast 96. The four-way ladder match where Joey Mercury's nose exploded was an opening match, would you believe? Was that Armageddon?
I don't know. December to Dismember, they had an excellent match with the Hardys. That was the opening match of December to Dismember. That was a great tag match. It's very easy to overbook these opening matches, especially with tags and when guys can do a lot. But I'm trying to think. There's actually a lot more. I would go back to even the old NWA. Their opening matches on TV, pay-per-views, and all that stuff were excellent. There's also, like, this is something for TV only. I love the fact when they used to go off the air with the chaos and the fighting after post-match whatever, and there wouldn't be commentary. And then the next week on TV for NWA, they would pick it up and no commentary, just kind of crowd noise, and then go into the NWA like opening montage. That was a good opening as well.
I'm embarrassed to say there's one from this year that we didn't mention. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, Hell in a Cell. That was Bad Blood 2024. Now that sort of, in a sense, goes against the logic we were talking about what an opening match should be, but it's sort of different with WWE in 2024 because there are so few matches on a show now, and there's 5, and you couldn't have it last because the Cody Rhodes Roman Reigns versus the Bloodline match was always going to go on last because that featured
The Rock coming out.
WWE champion.
And Rock came out.
Yeah, and The Rock coming out briefly as well. So you can't have CM Punk Drew McIntyre last then. So do you have that as the semi-main? Or do you have that first, as they did with Bad Blood?
Well, what they did there was, and I don't think WWE was 100% right for doing that, but for what they did and how they laid it out, they gave the fans time to breathe after that. That's another thing too, that the fans have. eh, Did we have blood in the second match of that pay-per-view? Remember you said before there was 3 hardcore matches in a row where Daniel Bryan had the bag and then you had the Swerve and Page thing. Did we have the same exact match following that opener? That's a good question.
We had Nia Jax defeating Bayley.
No, I on the AEW pay-per-view.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was after CM Punk, Drew McIntyre.
They
Nia
always
Jax
put the
and
girls
Bayley,
after
so, yeah.
something like that, and no offense to the girls, but it gives the fans the chance to breathe. The girls work hard, but that's just the spot. It's like before the main event of Raw, it would usually, when I was there, be a girls' match right before the main event to kind of give away. It's like a popcorn match, which we hate that saying, but I've been in plenty of them, so trust me.
We're going to stick with AEW. Tony Khan and the media scrum. Now, not only was this the worst question in press scrum history.
That's saying something.
Because, jeez, I know. Apparently this guy, the same I won't give his name out, but apparently this guy also asked an awful question a year before as well. So that being said, why don't we watch it together? How about that?
I was going to say,
So
if he could be a yearly guy that just comes around every year to ask a dumb question, that would be great.
I think he might do. I think he might actually do that.
Star is born.
Okay, then. So we're not only listening to the worst question ever given, because the guy basically just has he's from the Wrestling Observer, would you believe? Asks and then answers his own question, the most leading possible question. Tony Khan's face during this question asking is something to behold. So here it is.
There has been what I would consider a lot of chatter online, negativity in regards to the product. And obviously, you're just coming off a brand new television deal. You're going to be on Max. You're going to be doing all this stuff. Do you guys have at least a strategy for next year to try to combat a lot of this negativity that festers online and is basically done for almost monetary reasons to basically bring down what you guys are doing when you guys are literally, having in regards to money, your best year that you've had since you've started. Like I said, I just see it online, and it's difficult. It's hard. It's hard to watch if you're a fan of AEW, to just see again a lot of the negativity in regards to and it's bad faith negativity as well. So
doesn't matter. Right, it doesn't matter Tony Khan's response. Bad faith, so he's definitely from the Meltzer school of not taking criticism on the chin.
I think his notification went off on, he got a PayPal transfer during that question.
Jesus. What was that? I was just doing the faces along with Tony. Let's listen. We don't need to listen to it again, I should really say. We can zoom
So basically,
in
he didn't even need Tony Khan there to answer the question, because he answered his own question. And what's the point of how did Tony even answer that? How do you answer that? I mean, he answered with his facial expressions in a way. He was all over the place. I mean, he's got a good range for acting, all the different emotions and everything throughout the.
He was like Jim Carrey. He was rubber faced. Like, all the emotions. Oh, all the thumbnails as well for me later. Thank you very much. Okay, this brings up several problems. One, they're letting any old clown in asking questions in press scrums, and regardless of how little followers they have, they will let them in if they are pro AEW. And two, what is the point of press scrums? And well, there you go. There's two right there for you.
Well, let's start with number two. It serves no purpose. I believe these media scrums on both ends, anybody that does it, the business is built on mystique and anticipation. And what I think with these media scrums, I said it before, these guys, Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, whoever else on the show, we probably had guys and girls that were really banged up. Will's bleeding, probably had concussions. We're going to talk about some guy came back and got a concussion in his first match. Everybody works as hard as they can to maybe, hopefully, maybe not successfully most times, suspend your disbelief. That's the wrestling business in a nutshell. I want to watch something. I want to watch The Dark Knight. I want to watch the superhero movies that you hate so much. I want to watch these and believe that at least for 2 hours or 3 hours, that's the real world. I want to escape the real world and watch that. These media scrums tell you every bit of what you watched, paid money for, invested emotionally was a waste of time and was absolutely, totally fake. Sorry, them's the rules. Thanks for your money. Do you agree with that? You're killing the business with these media scrums. And that's an overplayed term, but you're literally, I enjoyed that night. Let me show you how we did all the tricks. And let me show you how it's fake. The belt squat.
Yeah,
There's your belt squat thing from Vince.
Yeah, it's a press scrum at a magic show, basically, isn't it? I mean, you can't just go home and just, there's a cliffhanger and can't wait for the next episode. We have to deconstruct. And WWE does these as well. And here's the other thing. Tony Khan doesn't answer any hard-hitting questions, or he dances around them. Triple H is the same. So why bother doing them? If you're going to do a press scrum and not answer any real questions, there is no reason to do them whatsoever, apart from added expense of having to film all this stuff and get some staff members to shuttle all the so-called members of press.
Well, the hours are long enough as it is. Journalists. The hours, especially for that guy, you're writing shows, you're running the Jaguars, you're running the football team over in England, and you're going to sit down for another hour or more doing this, and the talent is exhausted. They don't get there 5 minutes before the pay-per-view or the TVs. They're there either in the music room, the video game room, the NBA room, whatever it is, but you're still at the building for hours and hours and hours. Not to mention, travel days are probably a nightmare. And you got to sit there and do that? I mean, that's just, it has no benefit. And I can't believe out of all the stuff that WWE would take from AEW, this is the thing that Triple H takes. It sucks. It's terrible.
Okay,
by the way,
one
our
more
media
thing
scrum after the show will be available on Patreon.
yes, absolutely, for everybody out there, where we deconstruct and what we actually think about stuff. What is this self-flating, only WWE, right, will invite some dissenters, and then if they annoy them enough, they just won't be allowed back next time. So it's a complete waste of time.
I correct you on that. I think there was 1 or 2 people that asked the Vince question during the whole deal, and they didn't come back, or they revoked their thing, or WWE would, like you said, why, and I'm sorry to interrupt again, why in the world are you doing these and setting, you literally have a target on you, and you may think, well, they're going to ask pro WWE, pro AEW questions, but you're going to get somebody in there that's just going to be like, I'm going for it, and that's it. And that person can build their entire career and a YouTube channel and a podcast and a Patreon and a brand off of asking those questions just once.
Ariel Helwani, 10 years ago or so, caught The Undertaker at the right time when Brock Lesnar was walking past after he'd just been knocked out by Cain Velasquez. He was in the right place at the right time, and that basically set him up for his career.
Yeah.
To,
where they said you
leave
want to
MMA
go,
fighting.
Brock got in his face when he walked by.
Exactly. That was a huge thing in his career. And yeah, I mean, it'd be the same. Here's the thing. With AEW, they won't even, I think WWE ban Brandon Thurston or John Pollock or someone like that, or they tried to come up with some excuse that they had limited space. With AEW, they just won't give you a press pass unless you are in the echo chamber of AEW. Everything's fantastic, and then just this. I mean, he was a proper neckbeard as well. This person going, "Oh, I think AEW is wonderful, and everyone who's a dissenter, it's all bad faith," and it's like, just to borrow a line from Bricktop, pull your tongue out of my arsehole. It's real, and I love this word, obsequious. It's a great word. For a joke, not even a joke, just to amuse myself, the next time AEW is in the UK, I will apply for a press pass. And some of these clowns who go there, they have like no followers. I have between this and Dutch and WSI 400,000 or so subscribers. So therefore, I'm already, I guess, more well known than pretty much anybody else who goes to these things. I'll guarantee I'll be turned down because we are critical, always fairly, in my opinion, of AEW. And that's too much for them to
Well,
handle.
I can get you approved. I'm going to tell you right now. Here's a secret for everybody out there. If you create a new Gmail account, it's free. AEWJames@Gmail, or what's the other one? TonyCon Rules 1 at because it might be 2. There might be at Gmail. What else? WWE Sucks at Gmail. These emails will get you. I guarantee you, if you put AEW James at Gmail and you do, we got to do it. You got to actually put the email and then screenshot it and put it up in the community post and see if you get a response. Right.
Okay, so AEW is more likely to be in Florida or just somewhere near. I will give you the email. I want you to apply for.
I live an hour from Tony Khan.
You can apply for a pass for his house and just sit and just ask him really, really toadies questions.
Let's put it in perspective. We can separate this goofiness and this anti, like, I don't know what you call it. Basically, the antithesis of what makes wrestling wrestling, and that's fine. But the tenets of wrestling will never change. You cannot reinvent the wheel. But I can separate, just like Flair, Shawn, all these people. Tony Khan is one of the kindest, most generous people. Dutch knows firsthand. Other people know firsthand that he's extremely generous. And our goal, as I say, is not to put WWE or AEW out of business, but help the talent maximize everything and keep the companies in business and keep the talents on the roster. So, Tony, I think I'm the only guy, especially from an ECW or whatever, because he loves ECW, that has emailed Tony Khan in the past, and even that apology for that John Moxley video. I apologize for the way I presented that during that video and called him an effing idiot and all that stuff. Never replied, and that's cool. But it's so funny that I'm the one person that Tony Khan has a huge problem with. He'll even forgive Punk.
AEW is going to be in London August, and but there's a Collision taping in a couple of weeks. Homecoming, Collision 78 in Jacksonville, Florida. So there you go. See if you can get a pass there.
Listen, they can stay in their lane. I'll stay in mine. I don't. Jacksonville's a far way away in my current introverted state of building a compound everywhere I'm at here. I got to pay my gym walls. I won't be able to make it. You and I, same goals. Let's move on. Just finish that once again.
Oh yeah.
I can separate Tony's business sense or lack thereof with the actual person, and I appreciate the person Tony Khan for giving people jobs and, of course, donating to somebody like Dutch and other people when he didn't even need to do it. So they can't separate it with us, and they won't give you a press pass, but we can separate it.
Yeah, I don't want a press pass. I wasn't going to go.
I'm getting one.
I did want a free ticket. I did want a free ticket to the first All In just because I'm just cheap.
No, you're going to be there. I'm going to make sure of it now.
Okay, then. Right. Just before we move on to the next subject,
just so you know,
is
that if you want to email Tony Khan, I think his new email is cmpunksucks@aew.com.
But I will forgive him.
That's the other email. You can copy that one.
I think so many people, because we see it on social media, or you did. I occasionally do when I bother to go on it. It's just like how wrapped up in everyone's feelings. I mean, it's pro wrestling. It doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it does not matter. In the grand scheme of anything, nothing matters. I know that, but I mean, people get so excited and so in their own. It's like the console wars. You're basically white knighting for billionaires. You're a sucker if you're doing that. It's like, get over yourself, man. We're just creating content. Too many belts. You mentioned this a few weeks ago. You want to talk about. There was a recent report that WWE was going to be introducing yet another championship belt, the Tribal Chief Championship, almost like the sort of like Samoan version of like the UFC's BMF title, I guess, specifically for the ongoing feud between Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. That has now since been said to have been a consideration that was ultimately turned down, and Reigns and Sikoa will continue to fight over the Ulafala, the necklace, the traditional.
We call it the red pepper
Polynesian
necklace. Looks like red peppers.
Well, it basically has. I think it's got some dried fruit on it or something. Anyway, that being said, the Women's Intercontinental Championship is still being contested for. Chelsea Green just won the newly created Women's US Championship belt at WWE Saturday Night's main event. The women's roster is about 15 per show, and now they have between them, if you include the tag belts, 5 championships between 30 women. This brings the total amount of belts active in WWE between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT to a staggering 14 just on the main roster, 20 if you include NXT, and if you include the NXT Heritage Cup. Too many belts?
Wow. Man. I mean, I knew the numbers didn't favor common sense, but man, there's more belts in WWE than AEW right now? Or is it neck and neck?
Well, no. AEW has 8 active titles, including 3 mid-card singles titles, men's titles, a trios title, and 2 women's belts. Add another 7 from Ring of Honor, trios, pure TV, etc. They're often brought up defended on AEW TV, and then AEW has the occasional Mexican belt, or Japanese belt, or they've got the MJF's The Ring.
He's got the FTW. Someone stole that thing?
Someone stole it in London. And then that was the perfect way to just say, yeah, Daniel Garcia stole it and pawned it. But then they had to make another and then give it back to MJF, so they're still defending that. The Dynamite something diamond ring. And then the FTW title has just been retired as well, in the last year or so. So that's one less belt. But yeah, AEW, along with Ring of Honor, are pushing nearly 20.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought I'd see the day. Because WWE, and this could be me, old man shouting at the clouds like Grandpa Simpson, see I use your reference with that. Mm-hmm. But it's just like when everything's a title, nothing's a title. When everything's supposed to be over, nothing's over. It's the 50-50 booking, but now there's 50-50 title changes. This is like, I use this, for some reason, the episode always sticks out of Night Court, way back in the day when I grew up, Night Court, and Bull the Bailiff was going to be a wrestling champion. And they had an argument in the locker room of the wrestler saying, it was my turn. No, it's my turn. No, it's my turn. And they got into an argument because they wanted to put the belt on him. This is musical belts. Just basically your turn, your turn. Hey, Chris, can you put up a gif of Oprah with you get a belt, you get a belt, you get a belt, you get a belt? Because that's what it is. Remember, the world title, the intercontinental title, the tag titles, and then everything else was a storyline. And in the show notes, you bring up lazy to create more titles. 1,000,000%. You know why? Because they cannot create captivating storylines across the entire roster. They have their main roster or the main event roster, angle, the storyline. They put care into that. Everything else is, let's just throw a belt on him and it'll get them over. Then we can take the belt off them and put the belt on them. Oh, we don't have enough belts. We need to make more belts, and then everybody's over. It's the exact opposite. You have so many belts that nobody stands out and nobody's over. Not to mention, here's the thing. Hey, I'm brand new. I'm going to win a belt my first match. I feel bad for these guys because I love these guys as people. Motor City Machine Guns. Their second match, they win the tag belts. Now, what have you heard about the Motor City Machine Guns since then? Nothing.
Very little, yeah.
The journey is what matters. It's like working out. If you can just be in shape off the bat, what does it matter if you work out or not? You work out and you stay in shape or get into shape or do what you can because of the journey. The journey is what gets people over in wrestling. Savage was Intercontinental Champion. Savage was World Champion. He didn't just come in and do that. The Savage formula, the Savage blueprint of those days of WWF is perfect. Absolutely. Comes in, wrestles locals for months. Probably had dark matches before that. has an angle with George the Animal Steel right before he won the belt. He wins the Intercontinental belt. Guess how he loses it? WrestleMania 3. George Steele, his angle before he won the title, cost him the belt or saved Ricky from the ring bell. But even within that, he had the ring bell, tried to just, crush Ricky's larynx. He couldn't talk. There was so much into that. Then he got called off. I think he had an angle between that and then the world title run, WrestleMania 4 tournament, won the title. Then WrestleMania 5 as champion has a storyline with Hogan, who he tug up with the year before. That carried Savage. Did Savage even win a belt after that? I don't think he did.
Yeah, he did. 92.
No, he won
became WWF
WrestleMania
champion
8 against Flair. I'm sorry. But basically, that was the golden journey of Randy Savage from coming in as a newcomer, getting to know him through the defeating locals, your favorite, destroying enhancement talent. Then a storyline, a title run, another storyline, a title run, then a storyline and a title run with that. Or two of them, actually, the Flair one. So I'm talking ad nauseum, but guess what? If there were 20 titles in WWE, the Savage journey would not mean anything. And anything around Savage, Steamboat, Elizabeth, George Steele, Hogan, Flair, would not mean anything. Even the match against Crush at WrestleMania 10 would not mean anything if Savage did not have that journey and the ups and downs. They're doing a great disservice. This here, it's like an ADHD version of wrestling booking. Just throw a belt on him, get him over, and get him out of here.
With the world title, because no one can say that WWE's done a bad job with the world title. With AEW, opposite way, it always seems that whoever wins the world title then either disappears straight afterwards after they lose it, or they get shunted down to the mid card. So at least in WWE, they're keeping people sort of an even keel and still in the main events. I'm looking at New Japan here. They've got 6 men's single titles, and I think one of them has just been abolished because I think it was the one that the fans could choose the matches or something, so it was unique. The Zack Sabre Jr., David Finlay, Shingo Takagi, Gabe Kidd, Ren Narita. 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of tag team titles and 2 women's. Even though New Japan don't really do women's wrestling, or didn't for many, many decades. They've got the IWGP and Strong. And they've all got weird names as well. They've got IWGP, they've got the Strong, they've got the Never.
That all became white noise to me. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. They don't mean anything, those names. I understand what IWGP and why that was chosen as a name, but I've never understood why one's just called Never in capital letters, or one's just Strong.
The Never Open Championship. That was the one that Shibata had, and then he had to do the real headbutts, and that cost him almost his life. Dude, even the WWE and the World Heavyweight title, what's the difference? You're just trying to prop up other wrestlers that aren't figured into the WWE title. Tell me which means more. Obviously, the WWE title kind of means more, but the World Heavyweight title, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought Cody was the champion. No, this guy's the champion. Wait a minute. And the women's side, WWE Championship, World Heavyweight. So the world is bigger than the WWE, right? So the world, it makes no sense. You know what it is? It's literally a marketing ploy to sell replica belts, which they do great business with. That's all it is.
But they're so ugly as well. We'll get to the belts in a minute. We'll get to ugly championship belts in a minute. Do you know why I think? Obviously, in 2002, they split the world titles between Raw and SmackDown. No, I'm sorry, they didn't. They had an Undisputed. And then they eventually split, and then Triple H became the first world champion of Raw, I believe, by default. I think they just gave it him. The point is that they had 2 separate brands. They had 2 separate house show tours. And it made sense to a point, I guess, at that time. But then there's 2016 or so, when they just put the world title back together again as one, and that was so much better. And then a couple of years ago, they split them back up again, and the thing is, there's not even really any house shows anymore, and they certainly don't tour separately for the most part. So what's the point in having two separate... I don't understand why there's any point in having a brand split, or at least a hard brand split. I mean, they should have people go back and forth occasionally. And, you know, you have your star. I mean, this is all a brand split thing, but, I mean, 2 world titles. Gunther's just hanging about with a bronze medal around his neck, calling himself the world champion.
Well, I'm going to tell you the formula. This is WWE Playbook 101. Put the belts on them, bring them in strong, and then like the machine guns and everybody else, put them in obscurity. They're already over. Let's just have them put other people over. Then everybody will be over. Hey, you're over, you're over. You got a belt. Smartass. So when I'm looking at this, WWE, this is their playbook. Netflix, the first episode's going to be great. We're probably going to review it. It's going to be awesome. What about episode 2, episode 3, episode 4? They're going to go right back to phone it in. You know what they're going to do? A draft. They do the draft multiple times a year, and they say these people are sticking on these shows. Then they start bleeding through little by little. Then it's the wild card, as Vince said. There's just no... You have a universe. You have to create rules, and you have to stick to those rules. And when you do break them once in a while, it means something. They break them on week 2, week 3. You can't follow it. And it's a shame because, like you just said, this is their what they say. I'm saying less is more. You're going to use the Fraser line that they use.
Yeah. If you think less is more, just think how much more would be.
This is strictly, I'm staying by my theory, and it's a smart one. This is just to sell merchandise. More belts, more replicas. That way, you know, you only got 2 shoulders at the conventions, but they'll find a way to be like Ultimo Dragon with over the shoulder, around the neck, around the waist, around the knees.
You know, I love the story that I'm sure some people will know with Ultimo Dragon. He had 10 belts, and one of them happened to be the WWF Lightweight Championship that was actually contested like mostly in like Mexico and Japan. But he appeared on WCW television, and no one noticed with it. So that ended up being the second WWF belt that turned up on WCW TV after Medusa.
Yeah, the checks and balances weren't there.
Title. Yeah, I love that though. I always loved that as a little factoid. Paul Heyman said, when asked about multiple titles, yeah, I'm not a big fan of multitude of titles unless you can give them enough time. We had proper focus at that time on the championships. I'm talking about ECW, I guess. That we held and didn't feel that we needed more championships to tell better stories, and felt that therefore the introduction of more championships only waters down the championships that we already had the spotlight on at the moment. What works, works. What doesn't, doesn't. If you can make it relevant, all pun intended, to the island of relevancy, then it will work. And if you can't make it relevant, then it won't. Listen, if there are 14 titles and they all mean something, then you should be looking at doing number 15. If you have 7 titles and you're struggling to put relevancy on all 7, then you need to cut down the number that you have. What's working? If it's working, let's do more of that. If it's not working, change it. So, as I say, you know, with NXT, we now have 20 titles. 2 speed titles. They mean nothing. Who are the speed champions now, Stevie? Tell me.
They're a speed champ. What's a speed champion? Is that a champion down in the hood or something?
No. Speed. The speed tournaments were like online, social media only matches that only last 3 minutes, and then there was a champion, and then very occasionally it's defended on mainstream
TV. This is a
TV.
WWE title?
Oh, yeah. There's a men's and there's a women's. Oh, yeah.
So this company that completely aborted my Stevie Night Heat championship that I was going to lose in the first match to Spike Dudley is now creating secondary title. They probably were like, if they like 20 years later, hey, got a great idea. Why don't we create titles for the secondary? Yeah, who came up with that? Some guy who had a spine infection who we ignored.
Hey, let me give you all the WWE ones. World Heavyweight, Women's, regular Intercontinental, Women's Intercontinental, which hasn't been decided yet. That'll be Dakota Kai and Livar Kyrie. World Tag Team Championship. Then on SmackDown, the equivalents of men's and women's, and then US, and then women's US, and tag team. Then the open ones, which are Women's Tag Team Championships, which is just open on both brands. And then both speed titles, men's and women's. And then NXT, we've got the NXT main one, the Women's North American, Women's North American, Heritage Cup, and Tag Team. Amazing, isn't it?
I'm actually looking at the Speed Championship. It's definitely themed for the show Speed. It's got the RPMs. It actually looks like one of those Logitech G 923 racing wheels for the Xbox or PlayStation.
I'm just looking at it for myself now. Let's have a look. Oh God,
It's exactly what you would.
that's
There's
hideous.
about 4.5 milliseconds of thought put in this belt, and I know you're going
Yeah.
to show the unseen ECW title reaction. I don't. I love it.
I'll show it in a
Is there a
minute.
checkered
But
flag there?
what's uglier, 24/7 or that?
I think the 24/7 at least had a little bit of a heart and soul to it. It was supposed to be a junky, pieced together, like destroyed belt because the hardcore title. At least there's people that like those replicas, dude. They asked me to this day to sign them.
I've got one above. You can't see because the microphone's in the way, but that's the Ultimate Warrior, turquoise backing one. That's pretty sweet. All right, then. We're going to go. Have you actually seen this, the ECW
I have not.
belt?
I have not.
Oh, my God. Right, okay. I'm going to share the screen. We're going to watch it together. Bear with me 1 second.
That's the speed belt. That's the speed belt, basically. Reformatted.
I know. It is disgusting. This was going to be the... I love the last iteration of the ECW World Heavyweight title. I thought that was really, really good. I really like the colourful design of it with the purples and oranges and everything. Then they wanted to replace this in early 2008 with this. There's a better shot in a minute. There we
Punk's
go.
like, get my name off that. Dude, the silver on the nameplate doesn't even match the silver on the belt. It looks so like DIY.
It's got a bit of chain link. It's got World Wrestling Entertainment really prominently put at the top. It's like a women's belt from the early 80s.
It would literally
Like
be
in sort of size
it
and
looks
shape.
so small you could literally wear it as a belt with your pants. That's what it looks like, a big
Yeah.
belt buckle. I don't know if that's chainmail or like it's supposed to be barbed wire around that.
It's chains. They're chains.
Oh, okay.
I can't mute this, can I? I mean, look at that, Ty. That's a great... I mean, that's a statement of the company. There
And
we go.
Chavo got beat in 6 seconds at WrestleMania 24 in Orlando by Kane.
Mm-hmm. Any comments beyond...
These things, like when you make these belts, it's not cheap. The initial, like the action figures, the initial mold and what you got to do. And I mean, WWE has the money, but man, why would you not just stick with it? I mean, it's like, why destroy every bit of the legacy? Why not cash in on it? The rise and fall of ECW DVD, and this is a one-to-one analogy. That's what fans wanted to see. Everything that was authentic to the original ECW, going to smaller buildings, having a smaller TV tapings, smaller house shows, and of course, just bring the belts they had there and you could sell the replica belts. But this thing trying to reinvent the wheel, this is Vince just trying to put whatever, like that belt that Punk had was the actual belt, but then that big silver thing that like Mark Henry had, Ezekiel Jackson, like, just why do you do that? Why do you make it harder? Than is that the one right there?
Yeah.
No,
It looks like part of a dinner service, that one.
it looks like
I mean,
it looks like a punch bowl. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Somebody was
What do you
drinking
think of
punch
the
when they made
redesign
that.
of... Yeah, what do you think of the redesign of the ECW title? It's not the worst title in the world, because I think we just saw the worst, ugliest title in the world just then that never made air, but like the one that the Archivist was just showing there was just almost like a pinnacle of creative bankruptcy as far as design.
If ECW had stayed around and if WCW had stayed around, my guess would be we would have the same exact design that we have with the big WWE logo, but it would be an ECW logo and it would make them all uniform.
Yeah. Oh, like the UFC titles or something like. I mean, it's sort of not the same thing because it's just different divisions, different weight divisions. But man, yeah, I don't like that one. But man, that other one's
You know, he
hideous.
did a really good job. And if you can bring that picture up, when TNA kind of stole the UFC belt idea with the big TNA logo on the gold belt that looked exactly like almost that UFC belt. Do you remember that
What
one?
year?
It was
What
the one
year are we
Bully
looking at?
Ray had, I think. Yeah, that's a good looking belt, I think. I think that's the one.
Yeah. I always thought it was really weird when, when TNA, NWA TNA was still a thing, and they had the dome globe in. It just seemed like a throwback from a previous time, and I'm not saying it's not a pretty belt, but I always thought that was one title that should have been updated, and I know it eventually was. The only problem is you can't remember any of the subsequent TNA belt
Well, you run
designs.
into the trap too. Like, do you put a nod to legacy in the past and 100 years of NWA, or do you recreate and you create the speed title or that ECW one? I'd rather stay with this is what it is. I'm sure when Jeff Jarrett had it, which he had it a lot back then, that was Jeff kind of being a wrestling fan, growing up watching NWA and always wanted to be NWA champion. I'll tell you what sucked was whatever title they brought the WWF at the time. Remember when Jeff and Dennis Carr lose with the NWA and they had like it looked like a women's WWE like US title belt or something.
Yeah, was it white? It had like a white
It
strap.
was small for a dude. That's kind of like the ECW one. It's too small for a guy.
Okay, to end the show, we're going to be doing that What Went Wrong segment that we never do anymore, and this one is Bob Holly and Brock Lesnar. What went wrong, Stevie?
Okay, thank you, James. And this here is that power bomb that broke Bob Holly's neck. And then they had a match after that at Royal Rumble when Bob had his surgery and came back and recovered. I have to say, Bob is one of, if not the toughest guy I've ever been in the ring with, and one of the toughest guys I've ever met in my life. He still might be the toughest guy I've ever met. But this here just proves that I'm going to say not the power bomb, but after the power bomb about what Bob does. So here it is here. And we're going to stop and go back to slow-mo there because I really want to take a look at this. Now, as Brock picks him up, it looks like right there is Bob. Usually, and I'm no good at this either. You have to sit up and look past Brock or whoever's power bombing you. In other words, your feet need to be down like this, almost against his back. And as you sit up, it's terrifying because you're sitting up and you think that you're sitting up so much that both of you are going to fall back, or he's going to fall back and you're going to be on top of him. So you kind of are thinking of going straight up like this. That's wrong. You got to look into the seats. So it's almost just a curved progress thing here where you're basically back here flipping, and then your head, you got to sit completely up. And right here, Brock does not have him, and he's in a spot where I think he was just trying to drop him down to let him go, not to drop him on his head or hurt him or anything. I don't know if there's any animosity or heat between these two guys. I'm just looking at the move. Like he loses him right here. And usually you're just going to like let him down. So he lets him down, but Bob comes with his feet basically in that direction and straight down onto his neck. So his chin's tucked and the neck, I guess, breaks right there from the chin being tucked. If it was the opposite, this is the part when you're looking back. We saw it on Botch Watch 2, Electric Botchaloo, if you want to look at that clip. The kid lands with his head back. That'll kill somebody. That's your C1 getting broken, all that stuff. With Bob here, I don't know what levels he had broken. Do you know? Because it's pretty high on the neck.
I can look it up while you carry on.
It's a pretty rough bump right here. And you can see Bob grabs the top of his head right here. He could be selling, or it could be that it's like electricity runs through your body and your body feels like it's like the surface of the sun. You heat up immediately and your body goes into shock. And it looks like obviously Bob has some feeling and is moving his legs, but man, his neck, his head, his spine is probably on fire right here. And when I go fast forward, Brock goes for it again. This is where Bob sits up correctly. This is where you want to be when you're in a power bomb. So when Brock picked him up, Bob literally sat up as much as he could, and his legs are exactly where they should be, and he's looking that way. It's unfortunate the first one was a botch like that, and Bob's fighting back, lands on his feet, and this is the part here that's amazing. Drop kick, drop kick. I don't believe, and lands right there. Now, the power bomb might be a two-stage thing right here, James. The power bomb might have injured him, but this drop kick might have also injured his neck because of the impact coming down like that. Even though he's landing on his shoulder, I just think it's amazing that after that, he's able to sit up on a second power bomb, drop kick Brock, and do that. So once again, the first one, you could see he had him lost right here. The feet aren't like that, and he's not up like that. And that results in the drop right there. Then the second one, when he does it, Bob literally gets up to where he needs to be, looking out here, and then, of course, legs down there. And Bob, man, to land on his feet right there, I was really happy to see that because he still has feeling in his legs. He still has feeling in his arms. He can punch. And then to be able to drop kick. Dude, he's just a badass. Bob is an absolute badass. And I'm glad he's okay because that could have been really, really rough. What levels did he end up injuring?
I can't find it. In the short time, I'd have to look at his book and find it. I might be able to. In fact, you know what? I'll research it and then we'll put it on the
if Chris
screen
can put
afterwards.
some kind of factoid up there. But I will say this. He's really high up on his neck. It's dangerously close to that C1 area that can really paralyze or kill you. The fact that he has, I mean, you can see it right here. Like Bob's neck is like, he does neck exercises, shrugs, face pulls, shoulder press, whatever you can do to strengthen that neck. And I'm sure during his recovery, he did a hell of a lot more. So I'm glad he's okay. And they got it, they did something out of it. They got an angle. Bob came and challenged. I think Brock was champion. He challenged him at the Royal Rumble for the title, I believe.
Yes, it was for the title. It was the
Undisputed
month
one.
before he lost it to Eddie Guerrero. Yeah, it was the month before he lost it to Eddie
That's an
Guerrero.
ugly belt too, by the way.
Oh, that big gold splat. Yeah, some people say that's great looking belt. I never
Hated
agreed
it.
with that at all.
I've
got a theory.
Just to end it, bring back the Winged Eagle belt, bring back the tag belts, bring back the Ultimate Warrior Intercontinental belt, and call it a day. Or even if you have a U.S. or a U.S. title, bring back the one that Magnum and Nikita had. That belt was awesome.
I have a theory, Stevie. And to be honest, when I was just trying to find out what he broke in his neck specifically, I think I was right. If you go back to the second powerbomb isn't going to be a powerbomb. He's rolling through it, right? Or basically landing back on his feet and then he's doing the...
He landed on his feet, ducked a clothesline, and drop kicked Brock.
I don't think the plan was for Brock Lesnar to powerbomb Hardcore Holly. I think there was a miscommunication. I figure so. And you can, when you stopped at the beginning, you can sort of see that almost like stutter of he doesn't get him up fully, or he's expecting Bob to roll through quicker, or something to that effect. But essentially, it was never meant to be a powerbomb in the first place. It was meant to be a roll through, and then Bob would counter it and land on his feet.
Well, the second powerbomb attempt, the end of the duck clothesline drop kick, was supposed to be the original spot. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And that is on Bob because he needed to sit up. Now Brock was inexperienced. That's why he went right back to it, by the way. Also, Brock is strong enough. He can put Bob up on his shoulders. I think Brock was just trying to assume that Bob would sit up. Everybody, I said it before, everybody has a bad take, a bad night. some move that they've done a million times correctly, and it's just that one night. Unfortunately for Bob, it became something, and I think Brock just kind of like gently dropped him. He didn't drive him down. He just kind of gently dropped him, but where the way Bob's legs landed over his head, the 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 impact, the part of the ring might be a little bit harder outside the center. All those things could be a factor.
One more factor that you don't know about is that Brock Lesnar had the flu during this match, so he was
Oh,
really out of sorts as well.
so he might not have had the strength even to pick him up. That sucks.
Mhm.
I mean, it's one of those things that happens, and I'm glad WWE gave Bob and Brock an angle out of it and tried to make the most out of a terrible situation.
What should Brock have done then? I mean, obviously not break his neck and drop him on his head, of course, or the upper part of his neck. But I mean, what would the best thing for Brock to have been? Is try and make a second move out of it, or just sort of roll Bob back down so they end up back in sort of like the starting powerbomb position? What would be the veteran thing to do?
Well, here's the thing. Bob was up before you even knew it. So you could have just thought, well, he's going to have a headache later. He's not like, it just looked like a bad bump. But Bob was right back on his feet. If Bob didn't get up, of course you end the match right then and there. Something I would do would probably be have the ref check on him, see what's going on, then back up like you're going to throw the clothesline, which is basically the spot anyway, right? Duck the clothesline when you know he's okay, drop kick. But all in all, probably, I mean, if Brock's beating him anyway, I would probably just have like stay down, Bob, let him cover you, match is over, or bring up the X, match is called. This happened so quick. And like I said, Bob is already on his feet after getting dropped like that. So you might think he doesn't have a broken neck. There's no way of knowing. That's 2020 hindsight.
Yeah, I didn't include it all, but there's like a full match that happens after it.
Yeah, you keep going. I mean,
Mm.
that's why I'm saying he's an animal, dude. He's the real deal.
As you said, rightly so, Royal Rumble 2004. I've got to say it's one of the weaker championship matches on pay-per-view because no one believed that Bob was going to beat Brock Lesnar in that case. But I'm sure he got a nice payday and compensation and sort of, kept in the minds of fans as well. During his convalescence, this would be where Bob would have his infamous appearance on Tough Enough. I think it was the third season, where he roughed up Matt Cappotelli a bit on it as well. And then the two, I didn't realise this, the two would then go on to actually have a match in OVW where Matt would win by disqualification. So there you go.
I didn't see that, but I heard about it. Rest in peace to Matt Cappotelli, too, who was fighting brain cancer for a very, very long time. He passed away a few years ago. But the thing with Bob, here we go again. Just like the other segments, the other things we look at years and decades later, you look back on that, are we more desensitized? Because it doesn't feel like such a big deal now. Do you sort of feel that way looking back at it?
Yeah, it's almost like like if you go on the diagrams, like say 1980, not an issue at all, to then it becomes a massive issue. In fact, not an issue at all. Then it becomes a massive issue in 2003 or thereabouts, and then 2024 it goes back down to not really being that big of a deal anymore. Sort of just caught like the apex of when people would be up in arms about it.
My whole thing was I came up in an era of wrestling school where they did that and much worse, beating you up in the ring, testing you, making you want to quit. And I think that's where Bob was coming from because Bob was broken in that way too. I looked at it too, the close ups. He caught him a little bit in the face here and there, but you're going to have that live on TV, pay per views, even some house shows where you have to lay it in certain ways. And if the camera's right there, and let's face it, this is reality TV. This is what people are talking about years and decades later. So whoever set this up or may have told Bob, like, rough him up a little bit or get in there and lay it in or do whatever. And there could be a producer that said that. And then Al's there saying it's BS. Bob's there saying it's old school. The fans are kind of going back and forth about it. The reality show format is exactly what it was supposed to be in that segment. That's that encapsulates reality TV, right? Controversy, polarizing content, or whatever.
Well, we don't deal in that kind of stuff, Stevie, I'm sure you know. Okay, then, that's the show. Thank you, everybody, for... I understand that people were disappointed that we didn't have an episode last week, but you know what? We both needed the week off, and views are never that great between Christmas and New Year anyway, so, you know, it's not like we were losing anything on the deal in that sense. But there was still content coming out on the YouTube most days, I think. I'm not even going to say what's going to come out today because I might change my mind because I do that. I flip-flop on these things a lot. But thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, if indeed you are only listening. I know the video segments don't work as well for you if you're only listening, but there you go. We will catch you again next Friday for a fresh, brand new episode 28, which we could be about games. It could be about ECW, WWE. It could be about figures if Stevie buys them all. So we'll work that out as well. So over to you, Stevie, with that rambling outro of mine. You better do the better outro for the Patreon as well.
I'm going to do my best with this, but you're the boss. That's why you change your mind, and Chris and I just go, go, go. Whatever you need, boss, we're here for you. And speaking of the boss has 2 books, one on Owen Hart and one on The Rock. If you say I didn't put the 3 up. If you are looking to, as one of your New Year's resolutions, to read more books and you're a wrestling fan, these are 2 excellent books to start off with, so support. It's a very highly rated, both of them are very highly rated biographies written from my friend. Maybe a third one, probably not. Let's put the 3 down. I have Stevie Richards Fitness, but in this case, patreon.com/Stevie Richards. I want to thank everybody on the thank you brother tier and the producer tier. We put up stuff almost every day. Even during the break, I was putting up stuff on Patreon. We interact with each other. It's a great community. Check it out, patreon.com/Stevie Richards. You can see the scrolling text. You get a shout out at the end of each episode of the Stevie Richards Show. Also have cameo.com/Stevie Richards. And also, would be remiss if I didn't talk about WSI, my co-host James. Interviews everybody from professional wrestling, Maven. You have Scott Norton up there. Most recently, Jerry Lynn. Go subscribe to WSI, and also Storytime, not with Ric Flair, but also with Dutch Mantel. For everybody here at the Stevie Richards Show, James, Chris, myself, and some dude named Michael Manna, thank you so much, and see you in episode 28.